We have reached the end of Murders at Karlov Manor spoiler season. We actually only have 2 cards left to talk about, but they're pretty sweet, so let's break them down. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for our final daily dose of Murders at Karlov Manor spoilers. So honestly, we only have 2 cards left today. WotC spoiled like the entire set over the course of the last couple of weeks. Only 2 cards. They're both rares though and kind of iconic. So I figured we should probably do one more video and wrap it up and talk about the last 2 cards. I also wanted to mention, even though we're at the end of spoiler season, don't worry, there's still a ton of murder stuff coming up. We're going to be talking about the best cards in the set on the podcast on Monday. We'll do Commander Clash podcasts on the set, Commander Clashes showing off the new cards in Commander, and of course tons of against odds and budget magics once the set drops, so you'll be able to see the cards in action. So anyway, before we jump into it, a couple of quick reminders. First, to check out the full spoiler for Murders at Karlov Manor, you should head on over to MTGpreviews.com. Second, if you need any of these cards, you can pre-order them from our sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. Anyway, let's talk one last time about Murders at Karlov Manor. So first up today, we get another Niv in Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact. So Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact, 5 mana, 6/6, 5-color legendary dragon avatar. It is flying and hexproof from multicolor, and then it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards, and you gain X life, where X is the number of different color pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colors. So Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact. If this seems a little familiar, it's because it's a lot like Niv-Mizzet Reborn. Honestly, it's kinda just bad Niv-Mizzet Reborn, I think. So both of these Nivs want you to play a bunch of cards that are exactly 2 colors. Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact wants you to play permanents that are exactly 2 colors, and get them on the battlefield, and get Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact on the battlefield, and getting combat damage with Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact, and then it's pretty sweet. You're gonna draw some cards, you're gonna gain some life, you're gonna deal some damage. Niv-Mizzet Reborn doesn't care if it's permanents or instants or sorceries, it just wants you to load your deck up with 2 color cards. And then when it ETBs, you get to draw a bunch of cards. It's a huge source of card advantage. So I'm honestly really struggling to see why I would ever play Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact over Niv-Mizzet Reborn. Honestly, every time I come up with an idea for Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact deck, I come back to like, oh, this would just be better if I was playing Niv-Mizzet Reborn as my commander, and Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact was in the 99. So it's not that this card is useless as a 5 mana 6/6 flyer, but as I talked about before, Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact is just like narrow Niv-Mizzet Reborn, right? Like, look at these cards. Azorius Charm, Azorius Guildmate. Niv-Mizzet Reborn cares about both of those cards. If it enters a battlefield, you can draw either one of these cards if it's in your top 10. Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact only cares about the Guildmage. The Azorius Charm doesn't do anything, which cuts out a lot of 2-color cards. So is it possible to build a deck around this card in Standard? The answer is clearly yes. I mean, we're in a Standard where the best deck in the format is a 5-color Atraxa domain pile. Thanks to the really good mana offered by Triomes and all the fixing in Standard, casting this card, not a problem at all. So if you want to build Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact, the mana exists to make it work. The question is, how do we actually make it good? And the answer is, you just play a bunch of 2-color cards that are permanents and then hope that your Niv sticks and that you can get in some damage with it. So you just load up on whatever Abulios and Spirit Sister Calls and Kaido Suzuki's, anything that's 2-color that you want. As far as actual synergies, the best I could think of in Standard is this could be good as like a backup to Jodah in 5-color Jodah Legends. If you look at 5-color Jodah Legends, a lot of the cards that you play are 2 colors anyway, and you can build a fully 2-color version of Jodah Legends if you want to. In that context, Niv is kind of a backup Jodah, worse than Jodah, I think. Jodah usually just wins the game if you untap with it. Niv, if you untap with it, you're going to deal some damage and gain a little life and draw some cards, which is nice, but you could play them both in the same deck if you build around it. I also considered trying to build like 2-color dragons in Standard because Rivaz and Sarkhan are both 2-color cards that are permanents, they care about dragons, but it turns out there's not any other 2-color dragons in Standard, so I guess that would have to be more of a Commander plan or whatever. In Commander, it's kind of cool as like Guildmage Tribal. We have, I think, 30 Guildmages now between all of our returns to Ravnica, so the idea of just like playing Niv-Mizzet the Guild Pact, playing every Guildmage, the flavor win is awesome, but even in that context, isn't it still still just better to play Niv-Mizzet Reborn and just like cast it and draw your guild mages rather than needing to naturally draw your guild mages and play them and then play Niv and have it live and get in damage and draw a couple cards from it. So honestly, as much as I love Niv and it's such a cool character, and Niv-Mizzet Reborn is my favorite Niv, Niv-Mizzet Guild Pact, meh. I really don't like this card. I actually feel like this card, and I hate to say this, but I actually feel like this card's kind of just lazy. It's so obvious that it compares to Niv-Mizzet Reborn, and it's also so obvious that it's just like worse Niv-Mizzet Reborn, that I'm really not sure where this card serves a purpose. Normally when there's a card where I'm like, okay, I don't know if it serves a purpose, it comes back to Commander, right? Like, okay, I can build a cool Commander deck around this, and I guess you can do that with Niv-Mizzet Guild Pack if you just really love it for some reason. But like I said before, every time I build a deck with Niv-Mizzet Guild Pack, it just comes back to I should be playing Niv-Mizzet Reborn instead, and my deck's going to be better if I'm playing Niv-Mizzet Reborn instead. Speaking of cards that might look a little familiar, we also got, as our last rare from the entire set, Hide in Plain Sight. So Hide in Plain Sight, 4-mana sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can cloak 2 of them. So put them into play. Is face down 2/2 ward 2 creatures. The rest go on the bottom in a random order. So Hide in Plain Sight, it's kind of like Collected Company. It's basically Collected Company, but rather than getting mana value 3 or less cards on the battlefield face up, you're cloaking 2 cards from your top 5 face down. So Hide in Plain Sight, it's not Collected Company good, of course. So Hide in Plain Sight has a much higher ceiling. There's this dream world where you like hide in plain sight to cloak an Emrakul and then blink it face up with Ephemerate and get them, and it's gonna be awesome. So there are really cool shenanigans with this card, but the difference between being instant in sorcery is really, really huge. Plus, part of the power of Collected Company is you can get things with ETB triggers, like a Skyclave apparition, let's say, and get its ETB trigger. Since you're cloaking these creatures, it's kind of a Collected Company that will never give you ETBs. I guess you can do the like blink trick, but otherwise you're never getting ETBs out of this card. So I think that Hide in Plain Sight, it's a very interesting card. Just how good is this card? And my guess is it's not Collected Company good in the sense that you can just jam it for value in a deck that can support it. So I was looking at like standard Golgari. If you cast a Hide in Plain Sight, maybe you get a Glissa Sunslayer, a Sentinel of the Nameless City, but they're going to be face down 2/2 creatures. If you really want them, you got to spend 3 mana to flip them face up. That just doesn't really seem worth it. I mean, you are getting 2 bodies, 4 total power and toughness for 4 mana, but I don't think that's enough anymore. Like, we have many cards that are 4 mana, make 2/2/2 tokens. None of those see competitive play, and that's kind of what Hide in Plain Sight is, unless you have shenanigans for it. I will say one of the big upsides compared to Coco is there's no whiffing, right? Like Hide in Plain Sight, if you see 5 lands, you can cloak them, and you're always getting these face down 2/2 creatures. So the ceiling's really high. In that sense, the floor is lower, but in the like 80% of games in the middle, Collected Company just does it better. So what are the uses for Hide in Plain Sight? Well, number one is this card is amazing with any sort of cloak shenanigan deck. So we've been talking about throughout spoiler season, like Vannifar Amalved Enigma, Atrata Deadly Fugitive. These cards that can cloak, potentially something massive like a Portal to Phyrexia or Cityscape Leveler, and then you just flip your cloak card face up with Touch of Spirit Realms or Planar Incision or whatever, Guardian of Europe. There's so many options. Atrata itself, there's so many ways that you can flip those cards face up. Hide in Plain Sight is a great support piece for a deck like this. If you're going to go all in on, I'm going to try to cloak something huge and flip it face up, you don't really want just Vannifar, because if you don't draw your Vannifars, you're not going to be able to do your thing. Having Hide in Plain Sight and Vannifar is going to make this plan much more consistent. So after maybe kind of trashing this card compared to Coco, I'm actually really hyped to build around this card. We will be playing a standard deck involving Hide in Plain Sight. It's like very high on my list of decks I want to build. So in a deck that actually cares about cloaking and has shenanigans, this card is a million times better than Collected Company. There's no mana value restriction. You can take advantage of the fact that these cards are face down to cheat huge things into play. Also seems good in just a cloaking disguise style deck. Like Pyrotechnic Performer cares about stuff getting flipped face up. Yaris protects your face down creatures by having them die and coming back into play face up. Hide in Plain Sight seems like a staple with these cards as well. So that's multiple homes for this card. Outside of Standard, I think you just play Coco. Maybe there's some meme deck. I remember a long time ago we played this like Morph in a Chroma Angel of Wrath and then flip it face up with Soul Herder style deck, the Chroma Surprise deck. Maybe you could do something like that, but in general I think Coco is just going to win out, especially in older formats. The difference between being a 4-mana instant and a 4-mana sorcery is incredibly huge because it's really painful to just tap out main phase for 4 mana and get your spell countered. Coco, you can kind of play around stuff a little bit more. In Commander, I think the same thing mostly holds true. Really good in decks that care about face down creatures. So if you're playing Kadena Slinking Sorcerer, the most popular Morph Commander, this is just awesome in the deck, right? It's putting 2 creatures into play face down, so you're going to draw multiple cards with your Kadena, so it just works really well with your commander. Maybe Animar or Vanifar is probably going to be a popular face down cloak commander. So if you have face down shenanigans, run this card, it's going to be great. Honestly though, my favorite place to play this is going to be Blink decks. I think Blink decks are maybe even a better home than the Morph decks, as weird as that sounds. So like Rune the Hidden Realm, Ligrella the Magpie, the only downside is green isn't the most popular Blink color. The most popular Blink is just blue-white, so the color identity issue is kind of a thing with this card. But if you're a Blink deck that is in green, I think this card is very close to an auto include, where you can just hit some really expensive bomby thing with Hide in Plain Sight, and then use your Rune or Ligrella to get the face-up version of that card. So Hide in Plain Sight, it might look like a bad Coco, and in most decks it is a bad Coco, but there are decks where this card is going to be really, really good, and I'm actually super hyped to play with it. So anyway, that brings us to the end, not just of our daily spoilers for today, but of all of our daily spoilers for Murders at Karlov Manor. So check out the full set over at mtgpreviews.com and let me know what you think. I asked y'all back at the beginning of spoiler season what your hype level for the set was. Now I'm curious, now that we've seen it all, we went through 2 weeks of spoilers, where's your hype level now? Is it up? Is it down? Has it stayed the same? Definitely let me know in the comments. And even though we're done with spoilers, don't worry. We're going to have tons of gameplay content coming up. We're going to be going over the best cards from the set on the podcast on Monday. So there's tons of content with Murders at Karlov Manor on the way once the card's released. So thanks for hanging out this spoiler season, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back in a couple of months, I guess, for daily spoilers when we go to the Old West with Outlaw Junction. So until then, have an amazing day, and I will talk to you soon. Looking for even more magic? Well, check out the Against the Odds, where we played literally only Rasted lands in Standard, and you can also find yesterday's spoiler video here.